So I'm building a custom motorcycle frame, and in today's video, we're going to begin tackling the wishbones on the frame. This is the rear portion of the frame that holds the rear tire. Alright, it's now time to break out the bender. Bendy McBenderson. Alright, so to figure out how much tubing I need to put into the bender, by my estimations, I measure down here, it's about 13 inches to there, and 9 inches to there. So that's like 22 inches. Alright, so I've marked my tube here at 12 inches. Let's try and get this thing loaded in here. Alright, so when we put it up on our drawing here, we can see that this is not quite lining up to the line there. It needs to come over just a little bit more. So, we'll go ahead and put this back in the die. Alright. So it took several tries, but we finally got this thing lined up the way we want it. So we just need to replicate this to do the exact same thing on the other side, which is of course a challenge. Alright, so a mere one mistake later, we've now got a duplicate on the other side, and we were very happy about that. And now I guess I could go ahead and try and make this brace that goes in between here, and I could try and cut these guys straight up through like that so that they fit together. Alright, so these are close now. I just need to trim these up a little bit more so that they fit closer together, and we can bring these things in together where they're supposed to be. But you kind of get an idea of how it's supposed to look now. I'm going to take it to the belt sander and just grind this stuff down just a little bit more. Spot on. Spot on. Alright, so here's our brace. Here's our fitment up there. Everything is looking pretty good here. So next, we could probably notch these guys out up here. Alright, so after a great deal of fiddling about, I finally got this thing to a decent fitment. So this is all fitted up here. This is just an extra piece here to represent the backbone that we're going to fit it up to. We've got our brace there. We've got our two wishbone pieces here, and then the axle will be going in down here somewhere. So that's it. My next move, I'll try and put this on the bike so you guys can kind of get a better feel for what it'll look like. This took forever, and this is the easy one. So hopefully the next one, hopefully I get better at it. All right, let me see if I can get it on there for you. Something like that, I believe, is how it should look once it's on there. All right, I'm now going to go about trying to make the bottom portion of the wishbone, which is the more complicated portion. All right, I'm going to start by cutting 25 inches of tubing. I'm then going to go ahead and measure out 12 inches and 9.5 inches and mark that on my tube, because that's where my bends are going to be. And then it's off to the bender, my friend. It's off to the bender. Alright, so we've got our first bend. I'm going to line it up on my sketch here to make sure that works, and it does. And now our next bend, we go to that 9.5 inch mark. I'm going to go ahead and reset this bender, and this guy should go in here. All right, and then we've got this handy dandy mechanism here that I stick on this pipe, and it's this guy here. Turn that on, and we've got an angle finder. We got an angle finder, folks. We are really fancy around here. Try and get this thing close to zero. Pretty darn close. I'm gonna go ahead and bend this sucker up and see if we can make something great here. All right, our marker's still on. We're on. Bend. All right, so now we can compare it to the one I already did right here and see that we've got opposite ones. Yeah, they're gonna be on the bike kind of like that. I think our measurements are pretty close here. You can see I've cut this one already, sort of fitted that one up to the frame. I need to do the same on this, and the way I'm doing that is basically, we want it to be essentially the same dimensions as this, as far as how far it sticks out from the frame and everything. So I'm using this guy and matching it up like this. And one of the things I find helpful for matching it up, backing it up to a straight edge like this. Making sure that both tubes are against that straight edge. And if I can get all that stuff to align, I should sort of magically be at the right spot. Then I can mark this tube up here and start to get an idea. All right, so this one I can't really get into the chop saw because of the angle here. And so I'm just gonna sit on the table. I'm gonna try and make sure I've got this thing straight. And then I'm gonna take the angle grinder and just go boink down straight like that. All right, but we can at this point take a gander at what it potentially is gonna look like. So I still expect at this point for this bend to increase, be steeper bend back there. All right, I'm getting ready to tack weld this top wishbone here. I've got, basically I'm doing one side of it at a time. I've got this side here clamped down and the center piece, the brace, clamped down. I've got this piece up on top here as a sort of a straight reference to butt the piece up against. And then I'm using the square here to square this up. And now I'm gonna go ahead and tack weld this part here, and then we'll swap this over. All right, now I'm gonna undo this thing and we'll try it out on the bike. Let's get a magnet. All right, so I'd like to get this wishbone stuff sort of onto the frame a little bit more than it is now. So like the same way I did on the top part of the wishbone, on the bottom one, I'm gonna get out my welding table and sort of jig this stuff up and see if we can get this thing together with the brace in it. For this bottom wishbone, I've now got two tubes that have multiple bends in them. And so in order to make sure I'm still working on evening up this part here so that it will fit on the other part of the frame. And so I still need to cut these back just slightly because we've got our brace right here. And this fits in here like so. And you can see that we still don't have a big enough gap for this to fit in between, right? I want to get this part here settled first, because once I start welding this brace onto here, I'm not going to be able to do what I'm about to do right now. In order to make sure that this section here is the same length, what I'm doing. Two little references here that I can butt this up against and make sure that this is straight. And then I've got this guy here, which is also a reference to make sure that's straight. And I butt that up against that, and then butt this one up against the other tube. And then I can sort of get everything straight here, and I can see if these are the same length or not that way. Here, where they're pretty darn close at this point, but they're still a little bit too long, so I still need to cut these. All right, so after a bit of fussing, I think we've got our gap here where we want it to be, or very close to where we want it to be. My first step, I'm going to weld this side and then tack this side, and then we'll go ahead and swap over and tack this side to square this thing up. All right, I've got it so it will fit up on this thing pretty nicely. And go ahead and slide this onto the other frame now. All right, so should be able to come in here like so. And then if we can get around this little weld here, wiggle, 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 wiggle. All right, there we go. Past that weld. Somewhere in this range is about where I wanted it. All right, so on this wishbone back here, before I start even tacking this on to the front here, I want to have a very good idea of how I'm going to get this thing straight with the rest of the frame. I'm exploring right now how to do it on the jig here, so I'm trying to make sure the jig is level. So to get this guy level going across here like that, and then also level going across here like that. So I've broken out the leveler feet here. If you remember from the video when we made this jig, I'm actually putting things into play here now. All right, so quite a bit of fiddling, but we've got it so it's level here and level there. It had to be brought up quite a bit. But now we can check our frame, make sure that is level that way. And then we can check the frame back here as well. Make sure this thing is level. And then we want to check it that way. I could do all kinds of stuff with this to make sure that it's not level with the rest of the frame. I have made a couple marks. One here, one on the brace here itself. So I can line those things up, straight edge, whatever, get the straight edge in there and line those up. But what I think I'm having a hard time clamping this thing. All right, so here's the contraption I've got set up on this thing. I've got, in order to get this thing positioned where I want it, a jack over here on this side, keeping that side sort of level. On this side, I've got this clamped to this bar, which then runs over and is clamped to this, to the actual frame jig itself there. And between the two of those, this thing is, I finally got it level where I want it to. I've got these two marks in the middle. Those are lined up. I can see with my little straight edge here that those are lined up. And then also with my level on the straight edge, I could see that this is level across the brace. I'm gonna go ahead, tack it up here. Okay, so I'm using some very small tacks here. I can easily break those off if I need to. Let's go ahead and check it again to make sure that it's where we want it. With this level, make sure this is still level. I believe so, I believe that will work. All right, let's go ahead. I'm gonna throw another tack on either side, this side and the other side. All right, so pretty cool. Sitting on there by itself now, its own free will. So I'm very cautiously approaching this thing, trying to get it as close to perfect as I can, even though I know it's not going to be perfect. It's already not perfect, but we're trying to get it as nice as possible. That looks good on there. Let's put on the top wishbone and see what that looks like. All right, so here's the so I'm gonna need to trim this guy here, and then we'll figure out getting this one on and maybe tacking that in. So that's it for this video. Basically, it's an update of where we're at on this frame building process. Hopefully the next video we'll get everything finished on this wishbone and be able to put the rear tire in it. Yeah, that would be so awesome. Oh, please. And so our next couple challenges are going to be making this wishbone and everything meet up back there, making the axle plate and getting the axle plate on to the actual wishbones. Lots to stress me out, basically. And so look forward to that. Keep on working on your own projects and keep on pushing forward, man. It's not always, everything's not always gonna be perfect. It's not always gonna work out right. But if you just keep trying, you'll get there. So thanks for watching this video. We'll see you next time.